And welcome back to Daily Justice. I'm Dave Erickson. Our topic today, long-distance parenting plans, making co-parenting work across the miles. My guest today, Mark Hodgson, family law attorney here in Spokane, Washington. So Mark, what makes long-distance parenting plans particularly challenging in family law cases?
The first thing has to be what's called a relocation. So the issue becomes, relocations, we do a lot of them. We argue this issue is when someone moves out of their school district, okay? So if you live on the edge of Meade and you go to District 81, you have to give formal notice. In Washington State, it's on your parenting plan. There's a way to do it. You send the letter and it's a form that you need to send, and then you file it with the court and all that. You send the formal notice and then they have 30 days to respond. Now, that's sort of one of the hiccups, because a lot of people say, well, I gave notice, right? I told him, I sent him a letter and an email and everything. That's still not notice. So the very first thing is notice to the other parent. There's a way to do that, and you should always check how to do that and then make sure you're doing it right before you relocate, because that causes a lot of problems. The second piece to a relocation that's interesting, especially like if you have parents that are, say, sharing a child, right? And one of them needs to relocate. That's always sad. And because one of the parents is not going to see their kid like they are. Like they're sharing the kid, they're seeing dad or mom 50% of the time. Somebody relocates to Seattle, that then becomes an impossibility. And it gets worse because sometimes people relocate to Guam, and that becomes even worse. So that's the second difficult piece is, let's say you have the person relocating. Sometimes even if you win, it's still sad. It's still sad. You took this family unit and then someone had to go far away. So there's some very real parts to this that you have to consider along with the legal aspect. So yeah, that's the issue. There's 11 factors that you need to do for the temporary, 10 for the permanent order, and all those things that have to happen. But when you get outside of what we call the statute or the law, the very real case is if you have two good parents, then you need to overcome or at least dampen the effects that relocation will have, and what a long-distance parenting plan can actually do to facilitate a relationship with the other, hopefully, good parent.
Are there factors the judge has to consider or to approve these plans?
Well, I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself. Yes, there's 11 factors for a temporary, and then there's 10 for the permanent. The 11th factor for the temporary is whether or not they think it's likely it'll be approved on a permanent basis. But such factors, I'm not going to list them off here because, quite frankly, it's boring on film. But it's the strength, nature, and character of the relationship of the child. There's an interesting one that's kind of hard to wrap your brain around of, like, would it be more harmful to take the child out of this environment versus leaving him there? That's one of the ones, special needs of the child. If there are such things as domestic violence, drug addiction, all those things, those get taken into effect. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you could have someone that's doing a really good job of parenting, and let's say they're an alcoholic. That can actually really put them at a disadvantage for a relocation, at that point. So those types of factors, we call them 191 factors. They're basically like sort of bad things against you, reasons to restrict your time. Those can be very, very important. But the good news with the way that the law is written is that these are technically unweighted factors. So one isn't given more weight automatically by another. So if I was found to be an alcoholic or a drug user for 20 years ago or something like that, and then I have this great relationship with the child, then the judge is perfectly able to look at my relationship with the child as opposed to me using drugs or alcohol in the past. So there's a lot of factors that need to be weighted in, and how you choose to do that is very important as to whether or not you're going to, I guess, succeed in either relocating or stopping a relocation in the future.
How can parents avoid common pitfalls in long-distance co-parenting?
That's hard to say. And, it's funny because it's what's long distance, right? Because you could have what's considered a long-distance parenting plan, say, from here to Seattle. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see is really adhering strictly to the plan. Mm-hmm. And I know that's probably something, but so there's a Harvard study, and it must have been about 10 years ago, and I forget the author of it, but they basically came up with the idea that parents, and even parents that live in the same city, if they follow the plan to the letter, then their children only really get to grow up with a sense of loss. And because, well, it's my time, you don't get to go to the sleepover. It's my time, you don't get to go to the game. It's my time, you don't get to go to the concert. Whereas if parents work together, it's like, well, Jimmy's got a sleepover. Great, go. Can I see him next weekend? You bet, no problem. How about he comes over for a couple days during the week? Perfect, done. the child gets to do and live the child's life. Well, you can only imagine if you add 276 miles, which I believe is what the road sign is just outside of Spokane, is 276 miles to the plan. It becomes very easy for parents to simply say no. So a plan that allows for flexibility between good parents can be very, very helpful to a child to go, okay, well, especially as children get older and they have such things as jobs and girlfriends and boyfriends and things like that, you need to actually factor these things in as the child ages, because a 10-year-old going to Seattle for the summer is much different than a 15-year-old. And if you can look ahead and work together, you can absolutely do it. I think one of the things that people run into the most is like, well, this is what the plan says, without thinking about what the child needs. And I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls we all make as parents and as practitioners, is that, well, legally you can do this. Well, yeah, but it's way better if we can start with a plan that can be flexible, because I think parenting plans oftentimes, the only times they should come in is when you don't agree. And then you enforce the plan. But instead, a plan that is easy to read, easy to follow if you do disagree, and then also takes into account the needs of the child. That's a big deal. Such as, what is the child going to need as they go through it? If you're going to put in a long distance parenting plan when the child's 6, it's not going to work when they're 15. Plain and simple.
So much flexibility involved in that, and taking the child's needs in consideration, huh?
Can be, essentially, you've also got the needs of the parents too. And the cost. There's a cost to driving a child across the state. There's a cost to flying them across the state. There's a cost, what if the parent moves to Baltimore, and then it's a whole different thing. So there really is. There's a lot to it, but I do think if both parents look to, how do I maximize this other parent's relationship, then I think they're going to be way better off than, oh, good, I made it to Baltimore, now I don't have to deal with that jerk anymore. And that happens too, and maybe sometimes it's deserved, but you still have children that were created by both. And I think if we can take that out, and if it's at all possible to fit that into the plan, barring the 191 factors, domestic violence and those types of things, if there's not those factors and you have good parents, then plans should be crafted to maximize the time with both parents. And really, how do you strengthen the relationship between the parent that is actually further away? I think that's one of the things that people should really consider, is how do I maximize that relationship? Is it phone? Is it Zoom? Is it extra time? Is it the random vacation throughout the year? Whatever you can do, as long as economics aren't necessarily the issue.
Mark, thanks very much. For more expert legal insights and to get trusted help with your situation, simply visit HodgsonLawOffices.com or call a number on your screen to schedule your free consultation today. There's also a direct link below this video.